Hey Eric, I just had a look at your math quiz game. Pretty good starter game. So I thought I'd just give you a couple of pointers on ways that you could improve the script, just as a little bit of feedback. So if you decide that you do want to do something like this a little bit more, then you'll have a little bit of feedback from a pro. So I have the game open here on the right and the text or the script open on the left. So let's focus first on the script. So you've defined your variables on a line of their own and then assigned the variables on the next line. And you really aren't doing anything else with the variables other than checking the value of them. So to simplify this, you can do this. You can just create the variable and then assign it right on the same line, and that just reduces the amount of code that you have there, so it's easier to read, so there's not quite so much code. Also, a common practice is when you, to only use blank lines when they add value. So usually we'll get rid of blank lines, especially if they're just at the beginning and end of brackets. If you're going to have a blank line, it's usually just one, so I'm just going to get rid of these blank lines. So that'll tidy up some space. There we go. All right. Next is whenever you start a curly brace bracket, when you're starting an if statement or a function or anything where there's a curly brace, what you want to do is indent everything that's inside the beginning and end of that curly brace. Usually just use the tab key to do that. That way it's easy to read as you're going down the code which part is part of that block of code. So I'm just going to go down and quickly do that. Alright, so we're getting better. Another thing, and it depends on who's writing the code or who's teaching, but the industry practice is to put the curly brace at the end of the if statement instead of on a new line, and the same for the else. So it would look something like this. So we have if code, else code, end statement. And I'm just going to get rid of some more of these blank lines and kind of do that everywhere. And you'll see that the amount of code actually reduces tremendously just by doing these things that I just described. So what was your code, taking up almost 2 pages of text, I think we're going to find that we can actually do this all in much fewer number of lines, and that makes it much easier to read. Keep it in the wrong key there. That makes it much easier to read when you're going back to do changes, modifications to the code. You want to make it so that you can as quickly as possible come back and make any changes that you need. Oops. I'm just going to get rid of some of these blank lines. So this is kind of a block all by itself. This is kind of a block all by itself, so I'm just going to get rid of this space here. We don't need the next statement because it's not really contributing anything. And here we can combine the variable definition with the assignment. Okay, so now we've got a much shorter version of the code, and if I just save this, and then I'm launching the file that I've just edited here, we'll see that it does the exact same thing. Okay? But the code is much smaller, condensed, and much easier to read now. So that's a bonus. Another thing is, so that's just formatting of the code. Let me just get rid of all that. If you're interested, what I would suggest, I don't know if you're following like a pattern or a program on Codecademy, but if you're not, I would challenge you to create this same game, but rather than doing it in pure JavaScript with prompts, so as soon as the page loads it jumps up with this prompt, I would challenge you to do it slightly different so that you have something like this. If we go, oh, and by the way, the script tags, normally they belong in the head section. So you got a bit of nesting problems here. This body part should go outside of the head. And usually, same way we indent with brackets, we indent with tags in HTML. So I should be able to see now that here's my HTML tag, here's my head tag, inside the head tag is my script, here's all my script, and then there's the closing script tag, then there's the closing head. Now we have an opening body, we have a closing body, so this paragraph actually should be inside the body, like that. Alright, so I've just saved that and refresh, and it looks exactly the same because the browser is being nice to you, trying to be what's called lenient. It knows that what you're trying to do, so it just kind of says, oh, okay, I'll let you do that. But you want to generate proper code because in the end that's going to be much, much better for you. Hope you can hear me. I have my mic moved on the other side of the room. My challenge to you is, rather than using pure JavaScript to do prompts, what I'd like to challenge you to do is something like this. A new paragraph in the HTML, 1 + 1, close paragraph, and then a button that says check answer. Close the button tag. And now if we reload the page, here's my page. Now the button doesn't do anything yet because we haven't actually attached it. But what you could do is you could turn some of these code blocks here into functions. I don't know if you've studied functions yet, but you could do this. So we have the first one. Now instead of prompting, I don't need to prompt anymore because I have the answer, or I have the question laid out here. Now we need a place for them to actually enter the answer. So we could do something like this. Have an input with a type equal to text. And we're going to have to give it an ID equals answer 1. Answer 1. And I'm just going to go through and quickly comment out all of the JavaScript for now. If you start to really get into this, there's a better editor called Eclipse, which makes editing your code much easier. I could have commented all the code out in about 1 second there, but since we don't have that, let's just reload. So now I have the question here, I can enter an answer here, and when I click the button, then I'd like you to be able to check the answer and then do a pop-up alert saying correct or incorrect. That way, this is too easy for me and I can just jump down to the middle question. Right? And so this starts getting you into working with inputs a lot more carefully. So let me show you just quickly how you would do this. So all of this code is commented out right now. It's as if it's not there. But what we could do is create something called a function. You do that by typing the word function, and then you have to give it a name like, I don't know, answer 1. Well, let me use a different one because I don't want to get confused with that ID. So let's call it question 1. And I'll even spell it right. Question 1. And then you put these 2 brackets and a curly brace, similar to an if statement. When you put these curly brackets, again, I don't know if you've studied functions yet, but You can put some other variables in here. Maybe we'll talk about that later, or you can learn about that later. For now, we don't need anything else in there. And what we want to do is we want to call this function when somebody clicks the button. So down in your button tag, you can just add a space in the bracket here and say onClick equals, and then quotes, question1. So what this is going to do now is it says, whenever somebody clicks this button, check answer, it's going to call this function question1 and then do whatever the script is in here. So now the script won't automatically run when the page loads. It gives the people a chance to kind of look at the stuff, and then it will do whatever they say here. So just to give you an example, if I type alert, you know what an alert does, it just pops up a dialog and then reload here. Now it doesn't matter what I type here, but when I click check answer, now it alerts test what I just wrote over here. So now you're seeing how we're connecting that function to this button. Now we don't want to alert the word test. What we want to do is check the answer. So I'm just going to copy this code that you had up here. I'll have to uncomment it, of course. Uncomment it out was what I mean. There we go. Now the only problem is, since we're not using a prompt, the variable answer hasn't really been assigned at all. So what we really want to do is we want to pull the answer from this text box. And there's a way to do that. There's a function called document.getElementById, and it's case sensitive, so you have to use that capitalization properly, as I've done here. And you'll see that I gave this an ID, this input statement, the input box, that's this guy. I gave it an ID of answer1. So I'm going to say document.getElementById answer1. So that's going to go to the answer1 ID, that's this guy. It turns out that that's an input box. And then I want to say dot value. So that's going to get the value, and now I need to create that variable. So I'm going to say var answer equals get the input box and the value of it. And now I should be able to use this code, because the code you wrote is already looking for the correct answer. So let's save it and have a look. If I put in 2, it says correct. If I put in 1, it's wrong. If I put in 3, it's wrong. So that works. So that would be a challenge to you, to put all of these questions that you had here. So this one's done. We don't need that one anymore. I would challenge you to put those into questions and buttons similar to this. So people can enter their things without having to go through the sequence that you've provided and have that pop-up. The reason we try not to use pop-ups is because a lot of browsers prevent pop-ups at all from being used, because advertisers use pop-ups a lot to really annoy people and put advertisements in their face. So some browsers will prevent it altogether. So this is a much more elegant way, and it's a better way to do some kind of a quiz. So in order to do this for all the questions, you would need to basically do these 3 pieces here, where you're saying, okay, here's the question, here's the input box, that's this box, and a button called check answer. For each of the math questions that you had, you'll have to give each one a different ID, so answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, and question 1, question 2, question 3. And then of course you'll have to create the actual function question 2, question 3. So you'll kind of copy this and do okay, function, this is going to be question 2. And it's going to get the value from answer 2. And then you'll have to do the correct math. Anyway, there's a challenge for you. If you are up to it, give that a try. That'll improve the page a little bit and get you a little bit more involved with manipulating HTML with JavaScript. Because JavaScript on its own is not very powerful, but when you start mixing it with HTML, that's when the real power comes in. And so this is kind of the next step in the evolution of the Eric LaFrance game. All right, good luck if you're going to try that. If you don't try it, I won't be offended at all, but good job on your first game. We'll talk again soon.